Very good evening to all present here. Uh, it's a pleasure to welcome you all to this 30th edition of Samvad, hosted by Let's Chat in association with School of Management Studies and NIT CALICUT. First thing first, let me welcome our keynote speaker for the talk. Dr. Sandeep Pandey is the present General Secretary of the Socialist Party. He is also a Magsaysay awardee who did PhD at University of California and taught at IIMB, IIMA, IIT Gandhinagar, NALSAR University of Law, and at IIT Varanasi. He has also co-founded Asha for Education and also leads the National Alliance of People's Movement. Sir, it's an honor to have you here among us, and we welcome you on behalf of everyone to this talk.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next, I welcome our moderator for the event, Professor Rishikesh. So, you need no introduction and have been closely been associated with School of Management Studies at NIT Calicut. We welcome you wholeheartedly on behalf of everyone.
Thank you.
I also welcome our HOD, Dr. Mohammed Shafi, for his presence in this event. Welcome you, sir. We also welcome Dr. Reggie George Matthew for the presidential address after this. Last but not the least, I welcome all the students and faculties who are present for this event. Hope to have a fruitful discussion and also have some takeaways as well. Over to you, Reggie, sir.
Thank you, Aaron. It's actually an honor to be in this event, and we had the opportunity to meet Sandeep Pandey. I think in 2019, before COVID, when he visited the School of Management Studies in NIT Calicut. And as Sir was also asking initially, it's very important to think about socialism in today's scenario. And we know how things have been in India, like how things have, what happened with the farmers' protests and what happened with the citizenship questions, say, before the pandemic, and how those questions and concerns were dealt with, I would say, by the government during the pandemic. And we have also seen how the pandemic itself has opened up a can of worms when it comes to the Indian democracy. So the question of socialism as to whether socialism is an ideal thing or whether socialism is something which is possible or practical or relevant in today's context is also an important concern, I would say. And as students of management, business, and students of humanities, social sciences, and other fields, we have people from other disciplines to attending these meetings. So it's important that all of us think about it, not just a group of intellectuals who would probably raise certain important questions which generally would get ignored by the government. So it's important that the students, it's important that the academia, it's important that politicians, it's important that all of us, the general public, ask these questions. We discuss this beyond certain narratives or nationalism. So that's something that I would say. So the other day, a recent article was talking about how whether you are rich or not. So the wealth in India is controlled by, say, the 10% or say of the Indian population. So when you have something that we generally consider as a mediocre salary, you are one of the richest in India. So that if that's the situation, that talks a lot about a nation, say after more than 70 years of independence. So these are some of the concerns that we need to deal with. And as I said, the pandemic has really opened up, the concerns that we should actually discuss in this country. So Pandey sir has made us think quite a bit in our last interaction in School of Management Studies. And I'm sure his presence, his words will make a difference. And for me personally, what I would say is we won't be surprised even when we get such data, such statistics about who wants the wealth in our country, because that's how things have been for us. We have been feudal, we have followed that kind of a system. We don't mind when we have some rich and most of the rest poor. We don't have a problem with such things. But when we are students, when you are academicians, it's important that we make these concerns more evident that there is a larger public discussion. So Pandeyji is actually doing that. I receive a lot of mails that he sends since I had added my email in his mailing list. So you can see the kind of work that they are doing. So, and as I said, all of these concerns, from the farmers' protests to the citizenship question, there are pressing things that we need to discuss. So it's not about portraying a glorified Indian past. It's about being real, being true to the realities of the Indian nation and addressing it as, I would say, good citizens in that sense. So again, citizenship itself is a question. Who can ask these questions? Who becomes national? Who becomes anti-national? All of these are concerns that we have. And many of us, or most of us, or all of us at times go with the flow and fall into these larger narratives created by media or social media or films, for instance. So in such a situation, it's very important for all of us, all of us, including the faculty members and the students here. It's very important for us to listen to someone like Sandeep Pandeyji, and I guess if we can make a difference, I'm really not very hopeful that all of us can do something as great as what Sandeep Pandeyji is doing, but we can definitely make small differences, and these small differences would matter in the long run, is what I have realized. And this is what we have been trying to do with students, and there is a lot of issue. Uh, I mean, there are several issues when we try to do that. It's difficult, to even hold such interaction with faculty members these days. Academy itself is, in some sense or the other, discouraging these kinds of engagements. So I'm very happy and honored, honestly, to be a part of this discussion. And I would thank the SOMS team and the Let's Chat team for having me here. With those words, I would again welcome Sandeep Pandeyji for his talk. Thank you.
So good evening.
Rishikesh, sir, you can proceed with few words.
Well, it's an honor and privilege for the Let's Chat discussion forum and the School of Management Studies NIT to host for Dr. Sandeep Pandey, sir. Welcome, Sandeep, sir, and all those who have shown interest in this little conversation this evening. Except three facets of Sandeep, sir, of having awarded a PhD in control theory at the University of California, being the co-founder of Asha for Education and the current General Secretary of Socialist Party. I'm not going to give a longer introduction because everyone knows who he is. And in the course of our discussion, next for a couple of minutes or probably 1 or 2 hours, I'm sure we will get to know more. And it's important that not to waste time, which could otherwise be used to discuss some of the pressing issues which Raju Matthew sir had already mentioned about, which are not just faced by India, but also some of the few global challenges. It is a request to the audience to ensure the decorum, as always, throughout this interaction, and also kindly feel free to correct any of us if there is any sort of factual errors or anything in this conversation. India certainly is facing or is at a turning point, especially in terms of defining its identity. One of the interesting questions which I recently heard about this topic of discussion is it that the identity of India has changed or that of the Indians that have changed? I mean, there's something which is quite significant and important we understood and discussed. Is there a significant change in the mindset of the Indians? For those of you who are keen at several of the recent developments, one would also get a feel that this is also a moment of identity crisis, not just for India, but also the world over. It is sheer madness that, when after almost 2.5 years of grappling with virus, who in the wildest of the imagination would have expected a war between two countries, right? Who would have expected a violence and extremism of that Taliban or an attack at the Capitol in the US? frequent disturbances of Chinese invasion, the political and economic tensions in Sri Lanka, Pakistan. There are several things which are really, really worrying. So, by various terms, I believe we are at a critical juncture in human history. Now, going back, 1947 is a landmark year in the world history, not just because India was the first country to be decolonized, but because after the World War II, which ended in probably around 1945, there was a lot of independent thinking, freedom, hope, optimism, and a lot of other things which India as a country has always cherished. And our first Prime Minister, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, who had his own version of socialism, had also consolidated the idea, a little bit of capitalism too, but capitalists do not thank him for it. And the left consider him inadequate, and the right have equated his socialism with the license permit Raj. So, the first question before we get into any other topic of discussion is, how do we understand socialism in the context and developments of our time? How do we define socialism? What is socialism, and how does it still stand relevant? That's a question with which I think we can begin this little conversation.
Okay. So you want me to answer question one by one, or you?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep.
Right. And then give me an idea how much maximum time should I take to answer one question?
It's up to you, sir. We have maybe around 5 to 10 minutes for each question.
All right. I will try to be brief, so that people don't get bored. So, socialism, according to me, is so let me answer this question another way. Yogendra Yadav was in Aam Aadmi Party, and he invited me to join the Aam Aadmi Party. And the answer that I wrote to him was that Arvind Kejriwal might think that corruption is the biggest problem of India, and I think that inequality is the biggest problem of India, and because of which I have joined Socialist Party India. And this, let me just share with you that this party was kind of revived in 2011 by Justice Rajinder Sachar, who was the Chief Justice of Delhi High Court at one point. So I consider inequality as the biggest problem of India, all kinds of inequality, the economic, caste-related, ethnic, regional, and then now we have this, religious kind of differences also playing out. So, and gender, of course, how can we forget gender? All these, the equality between rural and poor, so all kind of inequalities must go away, and that is the objective of socialism. So I would define socialism as a society where everybody is equal and everybody has an equal opportunity to earn their livelihood and live with dignity. So that would be my short answer.
Okay. Well, I was watching a video of Rahul Gandhi, a recent interview which had happened, I think, 2 days back. And in that address, he mentioned India as not a nation, but a union of states. And the implication is that there is a negotiation between the states. There is, or probably now we could say, had always been a culture of debates and discussions, or so to say, a samvad among these states to arrive at a sort of a national consensus. But the RSS or the ideological mentor of the people in currently in dispensation looks at India as a geographical entity, limited by the boundaries of a country. While we try to decipher these two contradicting ideas, how do you like to interpret the idea of India? Because this is something which is getting constantly redefined, reimagined, given the kind of conversations which are happening these days.
Yeah. So Let me answer this question again by giving an example from something which happened in my life. I was in Turkey, on my way to Gaza, and conversing with a group of 4 or 5 young people, all men, and one of them was an English teacher. He asked me, "Are you a Muslim?" And I said no, and I also said after a pause that I don't believe in God. I'm an atheist. The second thing he was not much worried about, but the first thing kind of he was taken aback a little bit, and his reply was that oh, never mind, you will be one day, inshallah. So I was perplexed, and I was thinking, why is he saying this? And then I realized that this man has probably not seen in his life a non-Muslim, and he cannot imagine a person being not a Muslim, and for him not being a Muslim, I was denying myself some privilege. So I thought to myself that if I remember my upbringing, then we were always taught by our parents and the teachers in the school that India is a country of unity in diversity. So diversity is given. There is diversity of language, there is diversity of caste, religion. Caste was not so much obvious at the beginning. You only learn about it as you grow up. But religion and language was very obvious, and we grew up with that idea. So I think India is a land of diversity, and the more you investigate, the more diversity you find. I mean, within a region, you will have, within a language, you will have, like, if you just consider Hindi. Now, Hindi may be considered one language, but if you travel from Haryana to Delhi to Uttar Pradesh, and in Uttar Pradesh, from Western Uttar Pradesh to Central Uttar Pradesh to Eastern Uttar Pradesh, then to Bihar, then, I mean, not just the language will change. I mean, the language is called by a different name. The language is spoken in the Lucknow area is called Awadhi. The language is spoken in the Eastern UP area is called Bhojpuri. And language is spoken in Bihar could be, depending on where you are, you could be speaking Madhubani or, some language which is, particular to that local area. So there is just so much diversity in our country that, we live up with the idea of unity and diversity. And therefore, what is happening to India now is very strange, where we are being told that we are one nation and one everything. That is not possible in India. That because and the idea of federalism and what Rahul Gandhi said is more closer to reality. We are a collection of diverse people. In fact, Hindu religion itself, is not a monolith religion. One of my relatives was a professor of Indology at Banaras Hindu University, and he describes Hindu, the term Hindu, as collection of non-Muslim castes, living across the Sindhu River. This is the definition of Hindus. So one thing is very clear, that for us the caste is more important than the religion, and then it's a collection of caste, and it is not a monolith religion. And then if you consider other kind of diversities, then you realize that it is a collection of people with different languages, religion, ethnicity, and all that, and it is not the kind of monolith that the RSS BJP wants us to believe. So unity in diversity is how I would describe India.
All right. I know, while trying to understand the kind of work that you've done, I got to know that in 2008 you had launched a people's group named Asha Parivar, and I think the primary intention of such an initiative was to strengthen the democracy at the grassroots. And I think you also focused on the RTI, the right to information, and other forms of citizen participation in removing corruption and improving the efficiency in governance and all that. And NAPM, the National Alliance of People's Movements, is also one such, probably one of the largest network functional at the grassroots level, a sort of a people's movement in India. Now, my question is, what made you initiate these movements? Do you really think, again, I'm talking in the context of the times that we are living in, do you really think the democracy or the idea of democracy is at a threat? And I particularly ask this question as I think the democratic contest depends on certain structures. It is by and large dependent on the election system that should be free and fair, depends on the judiciary that should be independent, depends on free press. I think when we talk about press, there is also the influence of social media and the other sort of tech-based news propagation mechanisms. And I think it also depends on the kind of money the political formations have. Considering these 3-4 aspects, what specific challenges do you see in the sustenance of democracy and democratic values in a country like India of today? Or there are critics who also say that India is moving towards a deep state, wherein certain collective of people or influential members of the government agencies get involved in manipulation or the control of the government policies. So are there instances, is democracy under a threat? What sort of movements can be, can help us get out of this sort of a menace?
Yeah. So I'm sorry, I had not intended it this way, but I have to take examples from my own life to discuss every question. So one of the important ingredients of democracy is dissent or debate. I mean, if you can't debate and you can't express your dissenting opinion, then it is not democracy. Then somebody else is deciding for you, and whatever is being decided is being thrust upon you, and you are just expected to accept whatever is coming your way. Now, in the earlier governments, at the center or in my state, we were able to protest on different issues. All governments, by nature, I mean, the nature of the power is that they become anti-people. That is the nature of the power. I mean, you become corrupt and you become autocratic. So whatever anti-people decisions they used to take, we used to protest against them. And we were allowed a certain kind of freedom. Now that freedom kind of varied between governments. So for example, in Akhilesh Yadav's government in Uttar Pradesh, we had more freedom to protest than during the time of Mayawati. But then in both these governments, we were able to talk to the officials and get some of the things done for the common people. But the problem with the present government is that for the first time in my life, I faced a situation where on the issue of Kashmir, when Article 370 and 35A were abrogated, and we had decided to stage a protest in Lucknow, there was police standing at my gate and they would not allow me to go out. I mean, I was under house arrest. I mean, we had, in fact, just after the Kashmir decision was implemented in 2019, there was an article by Pratap Bhanu Mehta, the former professor and vice chancellor of Ashoka University, in which Pratap Bhanu Mehta had said in Indian Express, the headline said, "This is not Indianization of Kashmir, but this is Kashmirization of India." At that time, I did not understand what he meant. But when I had police at my gate, putting me under house arrest, not allowing me to go and participate in the protest. Then I realized what Pratap Bhanu Mehta meant by saying that the decision was in Kashmir was actually Kashmirization of India, because that is something very common in Kashmir, that people are put under house arrest. But I had never experienced it. So since then, I have put under house arrest thrice, twice on the issue of Kashmir and once on the issue of CA and RC when we were going out to protest on 19 December 2019. And 3 times I have been prevented from going to Ayodhya. Just like the Hindutva people have a project in Ayodhya, we too have formed a trust and we want to build a multi-faith harmony center in Ayodhya. There is a temple where the mahant of that temple has provided a space. The trust has been formed. There are 5 trustees, including a Dalit, a transgender, and a Muslim. And this trust wants to build a multi-faith harmony center in Ayodhya. Now, after the Kashmir decision, things became so sensitive that thrice, when I tried to go to Ayodhya, twice they stopped me on the way. Heavy police, cordon, posted at a point between Lucknow and Ayodhya. The distance is about 130 kilometers. They would not let me proceed beyond that point. And once when I went on a motorcycle and reached Ayodhya, the police brought me back, so they would not let me go to Ayodhya. So these kind of things, we have not seen in the previous governments. And whenever we take up a issue, for example, recently we organized protests on the issue of stray cattle before the UP elections. There is nobody who you can talk to. The officials are not willing to talk to you. The ministers are powerless because all the decision making is centralized either in the hands of the chief minister or the prime minister. The MLAs, MPs, and the ministers of the ruling party, they don't know, what decisions to take. And even if they take a decision, they are not sure whether, they will be implemented. So such a centralized, government where you can't talk to officials and politicians and have them address your grievances. This kind of thing is new. This is a new phenomena, and this is how we can understand how the democratic space in India is shrinking. So it is shrinking on 2 counts. First of all, our fundamental right to freedom of expression is being curtailed. You are not allowed to say what you want to say. Even if you say it, the media will not write about it. And secondly, there is nobody willing to talk to you to address your grievances. So which means that the government will take all decisions. It has a viewpoint, it has an ideology, it will take all decisions according to that ideology, and then will expect you to accept its decisions. It doesn't expect you to come and have debate and dialogue with them and try to change its decision. This is something new. In the previous governments, we have seen, for example, during Manmohan Singh's government, they brought some amendments in the RTI Act, which were anti-people, and we protested and we got the amendments changed. So the governments were willing to talk to you, they were willing to change their decisions, but not this government. And that is what is called anti-democratic government.
So since you've been narrating a lot of personal instances, I just thought of bringing another incident, the charges against you while you were sacked from IIT, while you were working there as a visiting faculty in the capacity of a visiting faculty position, and you were branded as an Naxalite. Because you showed a banned documentary on Nirbhaya case, and you were branded as if you were involved in anti-national activity. Now, but while sharing your stance or probably your version of the story through a statement which you had issued later, you had clarified that you're not an ex-Lite, and the ideology that you consider as closest to that of Gandhian, and but you empathize with the cause which the Naxalites stand up for. And what for me personally I found more profound was the second part of the statement, wherein you emphasized, and I quote, I don't believe in the idea of a nation or national boundaries, which I think are responsible for artificial divisions among human beings, similar to the ones on the basis of caste or religion. And hence, I cannot be anti or pro nation. I am pro people. I'm no, I'm not a nationalist, but I'm a universalist. Now, could you please extend your thoughts on the persistent attack, uh, charges of UAPA and false accusations on, and in certain cases, people are murdered for expressing their viewpoint. A lot of independent thinkers have been either attacked or a character assassinated in the last few years. In these contexts, how will you, kind of look at the idea of free expression? What are the challenges, and what can we do? What do we need to do? And probably this could be one platform wherein we could share ideas about, dealing with this issue.
Yeah. So you are right. Those are the things that are attributed to me, and I have always took a position that it is very strange that even educated people who are against caste and religion, the division of the people on the basis of caste and religion, they might be religious people, but most of the religious people they believe in this philosophy of coexistence or communal harmony. But the same people, also consider themselves nationalists, and they think that going and dying for the country is patriotism. And I have a different viewpoint there. Yes, it is good that you are willing to sacrifice your life, but then we have to also think about the question as to why people have to sacrifice their lives on the border. Before the Galvin Valley incident, for a long time, India and China had an unspoken agreement that the soldiers will not fire at each other. So there were no soldier deaths on the Indo-Chinese border, unlike the India-Pakistan border. And if you think about it, India and Pakistan are the two closest cultures. Maybe I should correct. The North Indian culture is very close to the Pakistani culture. The language, the food, the dress, and everything. They listen to the same Hindi film songs. They have the same heroes. Probably even the cricketers. When Mr. Narendra Modi went to meet Nawaz Sharif, he did not ask him why the Pakistani soldier killed Indian soldiers. He went and participated in a family ceremony of Nawaz Sharif. He presented a shawl to Nawaz Sharif's mother, and if you look at the picture when Modi and Nawaz Sharif are walking together, they have their hands in each other's hands like this. They are holding their hands together. So my question is, if Mr. Narendra Modi wants to have a cordial relationship with the Pakistani Prime Minister, even though India and Pakistan are considered enemies, why do our soldiers, kill each other? Every evening there is a ceremony at Wagah border where all the you can see all the frenzy, and there will be patriotic slogans or nationalist slogans against each other, whereas the same people, if they're allowed to meet, the same soldiers who will be staring at each other during this ceremony as if they are the worst of enemies, would be exchanging sweets on the Hindu and Muslim festivals. So the common human sentiment is that of friendship is that of harmony, and we built this artificial animosity based on this idea of nationalism. I mean, just think about it. You are an Indian because you are born on this side of the border, and you are a Pakistani because you are on that side of the border. You speak the same language, which could be Punjabi. You may even have common ancestors, because there are families in which one brother became a Sikh and another became a Hindu, or a third one became a Muslim. So from the same lineage, you could have been divided into different religions, and you happen to be partitioned by somebody who did not live in that area, some outsiders, some British probably partitioned it, and now we are told that we have to be each other's enemies and ready to fire at each other. So this is a very absurd concept, and this whole idea of nationalism based on patriotic valor, to be willing to sacrifice your life fighting the enemy. The problem with this concept of nationalism is that without an enemy, your concept of nationalism doesn't stand. So this is a negative concept, in fact. So there should be a positive concept of nationalism, something which is being taught in the schools of Delhi by the Aam Aadmi Party government. I appreciate that they are building a positive concept of nationalism, and this artificial division of people in the name of nations should be done away with. We should become like Europe, where there are no national boundaries, where there are armies protecting the boundaries. You can go from one country into another without any passport and visa. So similarly, we are campaigning for a border-free, a nuclear weapon-free, army-free, South Asia. And if you think about it, the world will be so much better place to live in, where we will not have armies and weapons. You will not see wars like the Russia-Ukraine wars if you did not have weapons and armies to protect your borders. If our borders became like the borders of the districts and the states within a country, then it would be a much better world to live in.
Beautiful, sir. So I also understood from Dr. Shafi, the HOD of the School of Management Studies, who made this event possible, that you don't use smartphones. In fact, you don't even have a phone. By the way, you use a land phone.
Yeah.
And you do not wear ironed clothes, and does not take milk, as according to you, cows produce milk for their young ones. You've also campaigned along with a few school students of, I think, Shiksha Niketan, against soft drink manufacturers. So how have these multinational, transnational giants transformed the identity, or influenced the identity of India? Because I raised this question because there are a lot of instances where the brands, for instance, let me be taking the brand name itself, like Kellogg's, which entered India claiming that they would change the breakfast habits, have eventually started selling Indian dishes like upma. I mean, that's also something which is happening. So in all those contexts, the rise of transnational, multinational brands, which in turn has also resulted in the rise of monopolies like Microsoft, Google, and in let's take something which is more relatable, Adani managing almost 70% of the airports in India. Now, how do you look at the rise of these monopolies, and also the resultant skewed distribution of power, and also the distribution of wealth, which I think you had earlier hinted about?
Yeah. So you are talking about the struggle against Coca-Cola, in which I was involved.
Yes.
And in fact, the story by which we were inspired came from Kerala. In Plachimada, Palakkad district, there is Plachimada is the name of the panchayat, or Perimuti. There was a Coca-Cola plant, and the local villages were protesting against it because their water table was falling, and the sludge of the Coca-Cola plant was destroying their crops. So there was a long struggle which went on. I also came and participated in it. And finally, the plant was closed down. And then the High Court wanted the Panchayat to allow the Coca-Cola plant to draw 5 lakh liters of water per day from the ground. But the Panchayat put 13 conditions, which were very difficult to follow for Coca-Cola, and the plant is still closed. So inspired by this story, we started a struggle in Varanasi. There's a plant on the way from Varanasi to Allahabad, which is now called Prayagraj, in village Mehdiganj. And the issues were same. The water table was falling. In fact, this is dark zone. The area in Varanasi where the plant is located is in dark zone, which means that it has the worst levels of water table. And a water intensive industry is not supposed to function in such an area, but somehow it is such a influential multinational corporation that it got its way around, and it had set up a plant, and it was further deteriorating the water table and also affecting the quality of water. And of course, the sludge was damaging the crops. So there was a struggle against this plant. We were not able to close down this plant, but another Coca-Cola plant on the border of UP and Bihar in Balia district, Simhachawar, we were successful in closing it down. Now, the problem with this software giant is that, they are drawing our water, and they are making huge profits. I mean, we are told that the free market is a good thing, but tell me how a bottle of water, which can be virtually extracted for free, is sold for 20 rupees in the market. I mean, how can you justify that? Whereas if you investigate the cost of production, people tell me that it will not require more than a rupee or a rupee and a half to make that bottle of water. So how can you justify selling of a water which costs just 1 or 1.5 rupees for 20 rupees in the market? Whereas our farmers, you saw how they waged a struggle. They were sitting on the borders of Delhi, demanding just 1.5 times their cost of production as the minimum support price. They wanted a legal guarantee, just 1.5 times of their cost of production. And imagine how much Coca-Cola is charging the people. So the problem is that making huge profits on natural resources, which doesn't belong to them, it belongs to the people. They are making huge profit, and they are funding the political parties in the United States, and I am sure they are funding them here also. But there's no way to know, because now you have the system of electoral bonds, which any company can buy and donate to a party, and nobody can know. So there's an opaque system of donations to political parties now put in place by the Narendra Modi government. I mean, just 2 days back, Mr. Modi was asking that I have not done anything which will shame this country. And I was just thinking, of various things which will shame this country. And one of the things is that he has put into place a system of opaque electoral bonds, by using which even earlier foreign donations to Indian political parties were banned. But now even foreign countries can buy, foreign companies can buy electoral bonds and make donations to our political parties. So in a way, this is not good for the sovereignty of our country, that multinational corporations will start deciding the policies of this country. And this is such a shame that bottled water in the name of Kinley and Aquafina, which doesn't require any high technology, which doesn't require any sophisticated set of individuals to run, in terms of training, that they have been allowed to set up close to 100 plants all over the country, and virtually looting us, looting our natural resources. And water is something which is very precious for life, and it should not be commercialized. So in essence, our movement was against the commercialization of water, and we wanted these companies to go away. Unfortunately, these companies have become very powerful. They have started dictating terms to the government. In fact, I clearly remember when Plachimada was successful in closing down the Coca-Cola plant, and when the governments of successive states started banning Coca-Cola in educational institutions, government offices, you will be surprised to know that even in our parliament canteen, Coca-Cola is banned. Coca-Cola and Pepsi. Whenever we talk of Coca-Cola, we should talk of the two companies together, because they have come to India as a nexus. They have formed a nexus. I mean, they are supposed to be competitors, but you will never see the price of Coca-Cola or Pepsi going up and down in any competition. They have pre-decided that they will sell their products at that price, and both of them will make profit. So this is a story of exploitation of India and its natural resources. Unfortunately, companies are very powerful. We can't do anything against them. But unless we protect our natural resources, it will be very difficult for our future generations to survive, when you will not have any potable drinking water left. All the water will be there in the market to be bought. There will be people, in our society, which is essentially, a poor society, where people will not be able to buy water, and you will have situation of thirst deaths, just like you have hunger deaths. So this is how dangerous it is.
Adding on to that, I think the global, the COVID-19, the pandemic had also sort of extended or caused unimaginable devastation and hardships, especially for people at the lower strata or the lesser privileged sections of our society. And somewhere I've read the crisis has not broken any systems, but it has exposed the broken systems. And I'm talking about healthcare, I'm talking about education, financial markets, everything got exposed. And here I think it was Dr. Shyam Menon, the founding vice chancellor of Ambedkar University, who had made a very interesting statement that the 27-floor building, which is a private home at the Almond Road, Kambula Hill, Mumbai, is the ultimate act of celebration of India's modern day inequality. I'm talking about the Antilla. Right. On the other hand, almost about 1 crore migrant laborers, for lack of food, water, or let's say work, shelter, had to walk back from their Karma Bhumi to their Janma Bhumi, probably around 200 kilometers, 400 kilometers. Now, in amidst all this, Ambani and Adani had collectively added close to $13 billion and for $5 billion in their fortunes. I mean, I'm going by some of the reports which I've come across. So, and I think this caste, class, I mean, there is also a lot of a lot of resemblance of the caste and class, the combination. Like the caste layout is in perfect harmony, or it is perfectly married with the class layout. So how do we come out of I think that's one of the most incurable disease, even after 75 years of Indian independence, the class divisions and the caste divisions. How do we get rid of this this rift in class divisions?
You are right. The economic policies being promoted by the country are increasing the gap between the rich and the poor. Some people might take pride in the fact that Adani is now among the top richest men in the world, or something like that, along with Ambani. But then we have to also remember that Mr. Manmohan Singh, in the ninth year of his prime ministership, had said and he was a prime minister who spoke very little. And I was surprised that he said that half the India's children are malnourished, and this is a matter of national shame. So on the one hand, you have half the children of India who are malnourished, who are stunted, who are wasted, and then you have two individuals from our country who are among the richest of the world. Now this is a very this is something on which we should have been for which we should have been worried about, for which we should have been trying to find solutions. But unfortunately, the present government, which will never acknowledge something like malnourishment, like Mr. Manmohan Singh did, because they think that if you talk about these things, then your country cannot become great. They want to make the country great by always portraying your achievements, and most of those achievements actually have very little meaning for the common people of India. For example, if some Indian wins a gold medal in javelin throw, I mean, how is it going to make the life of a common Indian better? I mean, it is good that he won the gold medal, and there should be more Indians winning medals at international events. But that cannot be the one of the major objectives of the government. To try to promote sportsmen and sportswomen to win more medals at international events. In fact, the system should have been such that youngsters should have been encouraged to come out and perform well. In fact, if you look at the population of the country and compare the number of Chinese and the Europeans and the Japanese, winning medals at international events, then it is a matter of shame for us that with such a big population we are able to win so less medals. So anyway, and one of the reasons there also is that because half our children are malnourished. So if children are malnourished, how do you expect them to even complete their studies? Forget about winning medals at international events. So this is something which is very serious, and unless we have a government which seriously pays attention to this and removes poverty and illiteracy and misery and unemployment, we cannot become a great country just by saying that India is a Vishwaguru or will become a Vishwaguru, and by always trying to project yourself as a strong country. This is not the way to go about. In fact, again, I would point out that there are a number of human indices where you can show, I mean, not human indices. I mean, of course, the human development indices are there, but there are other indices like, how free is your press, how much democratic freedom is there in your society. On number of such international indices, our country has been sliding. During the rule of the Bharatiya Janata Party. And this is one thing which must be pointed out to Mr. Narendra Modi when he says that he hasn't done anything which will shame this country. We should be ashamed of the fact that in every indices where we should have been moving up, or if not moving up, at least should have remained stable. We are sliding down. I mean, everything that matters for us. So we have to be worried about this, and we must take care of this problem. Otherwise, we can never be a healthy society. We can never be a peaceful society. I mean, we should not have the ambition of becoming the most, militarily the most important country in the region, if not the world, because India has those kind of ambitions. India wants a seat in Security Council. India wants a seat in Security Council. So why do you want a seat in Security Council? I mean, what will happen? How will it make the lives of the common Indians better? So we are trying to be, if not in the G8, we want to have, elite clubs like BRICS and Quad, and we want to be member of them, and we are very proud of that. But then what about the majority of Indian population who does not even get enough food to eat, where children have not good schooling? And as you mentioned, our healthcare system is so fragile that it was exposed during the COVID time, when we saw people dying in ambulances outside hospitals, in the cremation places in cities like Lucknow. The fires were burning for 24 hours for days. Bodies were floating in river Ganga. Those were really things which should have opened our eyes and should have awakened us to make our public systems better. Public education system, public healthcare system, public transportation system, public communication system. But unfortunately, Mr. Modi has a dream that every hand should have a mobile, and I'm very fortunate that I don't keep a mobile phone, and every farm should have a drone. It almost sounds like he's promoting the agenda of certain companies, and not worrying about the common poor people of this country. I know many poor people in this country who either do not carry a phone, or just carry a very basic one, not a smartphone, which they don't know how to operate, or their phones don't function. So even if they have a phone, it doesn't function. And it is really a disadvantage, because now I believe that the attendance for Manrega, the Mahatma Gandhi Rural Employment Guarantee Act, has to be recorded on an app. Now tell me, if a person doesn't have a smartphone, how would he or she record their attendance? And if they have a smartphone, why will they work in Manrega? They will go and do something which is better paying. So it's a country of contradictions, and we don't even realize the kind of systems we are creating, which are anti-people.
Yes, sir. And as part of preparation for this interaction, I had also collected a few statistics, which I think I should read out, if with your consent.
Yeah.
India had slipped to not one position in the global hunger index of the 116 countries from its 2020 position of 94. When it comes to World Press Freedom Index, India is ranked 142, same as last year, and after it had consistently slid down from 133 in 2016. Now, India was also ranked 85 among 180 countries in terms of corruption index. So there are a lot of indices, as Sir had rightly mentioned. And if you go with the United Nations Human Development Index, India has been placed 120th rank out of 165 countries. And going by Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, almost 53 million are unemployed post the pandemic in December 2021. So there are so many such reports. But now my question here is, the government is mostly on a denial mode. They would accept only those reports which can help them push a certain narrative, a positive narratives, and then either they would allege as the mechanism is faulty, or it has a Western agenda being pushed through. All of these, whether it is WHO, whether it is UNO. How do we? And on the other hand, the people in this position have also the power and influence of social media, the power and influence of the news channels, wherein I was surprised that there was a channel which came and disappeared just before the election in the name of Modi. Now, this is the way in which the technology and the news channels are being used. So how for a layman can understand what is the reality?
Yes, I mean, you are right. The technology is being used by the ruling party to its advantage, and it is very surprising that things which actually paint our image in a bad light they are somehow able to overcome it just by their own publicity in the media. Things which matter, for example, law and order. Now, law and order, is very bad in my state. I mean, every day you see deaths happening inside police stations, But then, you will see the news one day and you will not see any follow-up news. So somehow by managing the media, by the use of technology, as you mentioned, they are able to build a narrative in their favor and stifle out any voice or any news which has a potential of harming their image. So this is very dangerous for democracy, because if people don't know the reality, then they will always live under an illusion. And it has been shown by researches, especially conducted by Professor Amartya Sen, that in democracy, for example, I mean, he gave the example of famines, how India was able to cope better with famines compared to China because of democracy. Because whenever famines would occur, the press would point it out, and the government would take necessary actions to tackle that. Whereas in China, because the famines would not be reported, it would almost take decade or 2 decades sometime, when it started having impact on the lives of people, that you would realize that something was going wrong, and then they would take decades to fix their policies. Whereas in India, there was instant action, because the press would point it out. So this is the danger we are getting into, that if we don't know of the reality, and the reality is not reported by press, we will never take corrective action, and then we will slide into a mess, if not the kind of mess which is created in Sri Lanka, but some kind of mess where our lives will be adversely affected. So it is very important that the democratic space is recovered. We bring it back, and the media freedom is ensured, and our system, our executive is more responsive to the challenges that we face as a society, and takes corrective action, so that the people's lives are not adversely impacted. So, but I don't know when will the present dispensation, will realize this, or will admit this, and will change its method of functioning.
Yes, sir. Also, while I was watching one of your video on education, and which is one of your area of intervention, you had a very strong point in saying that if at all there is a model of enhancing education, it is the socialistic model.
Yeah.
Can you just elaborate that statement? Because I found that quite interesting. You had quoted a lot of examples of how a lot of developing countries had followed the universalization of education, and also the community school programs, and a lot of other things which you mentioned in that video. How socialistic model is relevant in the field of education, and what are the challenges in that domain?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question, Rishikesh, because this is the best example to show that socialism is the preferred model. Now, I'm sure you would have heard that socialism has failed just because the Soviet Russia collapsed, and even the countries there have adopted neoliberal economic policies. But if you look at education, then the only model of education which has worked in the entire world is called the common school system. So common school system is a system of education. I mean, every child has access to the same kind of education system, which is run and which is financed and which is regulated by the government, not by any private body. And all the G8 countries and the other countries which have achieved 99 to 100% literacy rates have used only common school system to achieve that objective. I mean, and on the contrary, there is no country in the world where private schools have helped the country achieve 99 to 100% literacy rates. Unfortunately, India, even though it is a democracy, we claim ourselves to be a democracy, we have not adopted the common school system in spite of a recommendation by Kothari Commission in 1968. And we have moved towards in a direction where now we have two systems of education. We have private schools where everybody and anybody who can afford will try to send their children to private schools. And then there are people who are forced to send their children to government schools. I mean, I'm not talking of Kerala, by the way, because I know that the quality of government schools in Kerala is much better than in other parts of the country, and they're almost as good as the private schools. So overall, in the country, the people with money are sending their children to private schools, and people who cannot afford to send their children to private schools send them to government schools, where the quality of teaching is very shabby. So there is already a difference of rich and poor when the children are going to private and government schools. And then you further exacerbate that difference, because if you go to a private school, get better education, you get a better job. If you go to a government school, you probably drop out before class 8, as half the children in India do. Half the children in India drop out before class 8 in India. And only about 10 to 12% of our children complete their school education and enter into colleges. So it is so poor. So our performance is so poor, and the only way, if we want to ensure that all our children are educated, is to implement the common school system, as shown by a number of other countries in the world, including the G8 countries, Iran, Sri Lanka, almost all the Southeast Asian countries, Central Asian countries like Kazakhstan, and a number of such countries have shown that the only model which works is common school system, where the education is financed, is controlled, and is run by government, and education is free. Imagine, even in a capitalist country like the United States, where college education is very expensive, only the rich can study there. The school system is free. You go to the school run by the local government, and irrespective of whether you are poor or rich, the education for your children will be free. It will be free even if you are a foreign national. If you go there as an Indian citizen, your children will get free education in the neighborhood school. Neighborhood school is a concept which is an integral part of common school system, which says that the child will go to the nearest possible school. So you don't need buses which will cover long distances to reach the schools. In fact, a lot of times people in United States will prefer to stay in a certain area because the school in that area is better compared to other areas. Although it is the same system, common school system, but then depending on how much tax is collected in a particular area, the quality of a school, the infrastructure and all may be better than for example, a school in a not so rich neighborhood. So that kind of difference is there, but the system is same, and that is very important, that the system has to be run by the government, and no private player, howsoever big they are, they can replace the government. So in fact, the only model of education which has succeeded the world over is a socialist model, and the same thing applies to healthcare. The only countries, about 30 of them, where the quality of education care is good for everybody, for all citizens, are countries which have public healthcare systems where the education, where the healthcare system is run by the government and it is free. It is free for people. So only when education in healthcare will be made free and will be run by the government, and there will be no private players. That is a condition. There should be no private players. Then you will ensure a good quality education and healthcare for all your citizens, not just the citizens who can pay money to get these services.
Beautiful, sir. Socialistic ideas, for sure, certainly do find its value in domains of education, in healthcare. But one shocking and surprising comment which I got yesterday when I spoke to one of my colleagues that we have the General Secretary of the Socialistic Party coming and addressing us, who is also the Magsaysay Award winner. He was asking which Socialistic Party. I mean, so my question is there an identity crisis for the philosophy and the principle of socialism, or the party, the Socialistic Party as such?
Well, I would not say there is an identity crisis. It just so happens, Rishikesh, that, just like in the society, you have very few honest people. You have very few people who uphold good human values, positive human values, who would always be forthcoming with help, who would always be willing to help out others rather than worrying only about themselves. Just like the number of such people in society is small. So similarly, the Socialist Party, which believes in higher ideals for a human society, is very small. But I am sure that people will realize the value of this kind of political philosophy, the principles that we espouse, and because they are universal principles. They are the kind of what we call shashwat mulya, eternal values. So those are the only values on which a humane society can be built. You cannot hope to build a humane society on capitalist foundations, right?
Right.
Where you will have exploitation, and where there will always be people who will be unhappy. So because the other system is not humane, and people will never be happy in that, our only hope is that when people become more wise, and they realize that ultimately it is the human values which will be the foundation for a happy society, and people will willingly espouse those values and will practice them in their lives, you will see a socialist society.
Wonderful. Sir, just an additional question to the earlier one. I think it was, if I'm not wrong, in 2000 or 2002, you had attended the opening session of the conference organized by the Communist Party of India, Marxist, CPIMLN, if I'm not wrong.
ML.
And you did not attend the closing session because of certain reasons. So what was your relationship, and what is your definition of communism, and it's probably the relationship of socialism and communism in the days ahead? Why probably you could also elaborate why you did not attend the closing session, and then also illustrate your definition, your interpretation of communism.
No, so the controversy regarding that meeting in Patna was that certain former Naxalites were honored, and it is not that I did not attend the closing session. I mean, I did not honor them. I was just one of the guests sitting on the stage, right? And let me frankly tell you that that I have not read any communist literature in my life. I have not read Marx's book, Communist Manifesto, or any of the literature. The only reason I am close to communists is because they too, like the Socialist Party, work for the poor. And in fact, they are the only party which works for the interest of poor. So that is our common kind of ground. and I have been going and campaigning for their candidates even before I was in Socialist Party and even after I joined Socialist Party, because I see that they are the people who put their lives at a stake and who fight for the rights of the poor, and therefore I share a common cause with them. But then I realized that there is a big difference between socialist and communist parties, especially in India. The communist parties believe in the dictatorship of proletariat, whereas the socialists in India have always believed in democracy. And the socialists have been closer to Gandhi. In fact, Dr. Ram Manohar Lohia, Jayaprakash Narayan, Achar Narendra Deo, three stalwarts of socialism, were very close to Gandhi, and also the other socialists, S.M. Joshi and Sane Guruji and Madhu Lemay and George Fernandez. So all of them are closer to the Gandhian ideology than to any other ideology, and therefore I have chosen to be with the Socialist Party because I am essentially an Gandhian. I believe in democracy, but I believe in the rights of the poor and I fight for the rights of the poor. And that is where I share a cause with the communist parties, because
right.
they are true comrades in this task.
Wonderful. Before, provided with your consent and if time permits, we throw it open to the audience if there are any questions. I just have one last question from my side. Upon receiving the Ramon Magsaysay Award, you had returned the cash portion of the award on being challenged to do so by a Philippine newspaper for your sort of remarks about America. That you said America is the biggest terrorist state in the world. And you had later clarified that he never meant to criticize the people of the United States of America, but their government, right? Yeah. So I think in considering the developments of our times, do you still stand by that statement? And basically, why? Why do you still believe in that statement, if at all you believe in it?
See, I believe in that statement, and let me tell you that it was not just in Philippines that I made that statement. I landed myself in a very sensitive position where I entered into United States with a press file, and there was a complaint against me by the Vishwa Hindu Parishad in United States, and the Homeland Security, investigated me for 2 hours, and they found that a statement where I had made, where I had said that United States is the biggest terrorist state, and they asked me why I had made that statement, and I will give that reply to you. That I have protested against the making of nuclear weapons by my own country, and United States is a bigger player in the game of arms and wars. I mean, there is a whole military industrial complex in the United States which sustains its economy. So unless there are countries which buy weapons from United States economy will not sustain. Now this implies that there have to be wars every few years in the world so that the economy of United States can survive. Let us take the example of the present war. Everybody is, including myself, is criticizing Russia for attacking Ukraine. Right? Russia is the bigger aggressor in this case. But why did this war happen? After Cold War, when the enmity between United States and USSR ended, USSR disintegrated into a number of different countries. What was the reason that United States continued to pursue NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which was essentially an organization of certain European countries with the United States to protect their interests against USSR. But when the enmity had ended, what was the reason to keep NATO going? And what was the reason to make new members of NATO? It was only when the United States tried to enlist Ukraine as a member of NATO and Russia felt insecure that Russia attacked Ukraine. So actually, it is the policies of the United States, it is the foreign policy of the United States, which is the expansion of NATO, which resulted in the present war, where Russia felt compelled to attack Ukraine. So that is why I say that United States is the biggest terrorist state. I mean, they go to every country where they feel that democracy needs to be strengthened. They criticize every country which which patronizes terrorism. But till now, they have not apologized for the nuclear weapon attacks of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which in my view are the biggest terrorist incidents of the history of the world. Tell me where people in such large numbers have died in a single bomb attack. So those are my reasons. And United States is a country which promotes warfare, which promotes selling of arms for its own sake, and even though it talks about peace and whatever democracy and nice things, but in reality, it always is exploiting other countries, and it is securing its own interests at the cost of the lives of the people of mostly third world countries and other parts of the world.
United States also had a president who had invaded other country, attacked other country, being awarded with a Nobel Prize. And the current president is also no exception. The kind of chaos and the damage we had done during. So thank you. That's all from my side. We've taken almost 1 hour 30 minutes of your time, and then had for me a very fruitful, engaging conversation. But then I think we should also respect the interest and time of Sir. And if there are any questions, provided with the consent of Sir, we can throw open for a few questions from the audience.
I saw the hand of Avinash Das waving. He probably wanted to ask some question. Avinash, you want to ask a question?
No, sir. Actually, that is wrongly reached.
Okay.
Sorry for that.
Anyway, I would like the organizers to share my email ID with all the students and faculty members. So
Okay.
even if you want to ask a question offline, you are welcome to do it.
All right, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your time. Yes, we have Biju Matthew, sir.
Yes, if sir has some time, just one question. First of all, my apologies, sir. I was late because I could pick up this email about the program only while the program was going on. So to everyone, my apology.
No problem.
And immediately I joined because this is a topic of my liking and interest. And early during the question answer session, I entered and was privileged to listen to you, sir. I'm thankful to you for being with us today. And just one question. I don't know if ever you touched upon it. Yes, you said that socialism is good, and I have a feeling I have a thought that probably there was signs of decline of socialism due to its impracticality. And don't you think that well-controlled capitalism may be better for the world economy as well as for prosperity of people around the world?
See, Biju, people say socialism has failed. But my counter question is, tell me where capitalism has succeeded. Capitalism has always resulted in an increasing gap of rich and poor, more misery, unemployment, hunger, devastation of environment, violation of human rights. This is a common story. Anywhere where capitalism has been implemented. So my answer to your question would be not a controlled capitalism, but if you find socialism as a utopian, something which cannot be implemented, make that practical by adopting certain methods. For example, Dr. Lohia. Dr. Lohia. No, but before that, let me tell you that in United States, I talked about the common school system. So that is not the full story. There are private schools, but then those private schools are so costly that a common middle class American family cannot send their children to those schools. So common American citizens send their children only to the common school systems which are run by the local government. So it is not as if the private schools are not there, but they are too costly. So it is not a state of idealism, where only government schools are available, but you have schools which are too costly. So most of the people will not send their children to such schools. So similarly, Dr. Lohia used to say that if you cannot achieve the utopian idealism of making everybody equal, which includes equal incomes, then at least have a criteria that the income of the richest person should not be more than 10 times the income of the poor person, right? So something like that can be implemented. And my argument is that when you can have land ceiling in this country, you can put a ceiling on the amount of land that you can own, then why can't you have a ceiling on income? Put a ceiling on income and ensure that that the income of the richest person is not more than 10 times the income of the poorest person. So including practical, adopting practical methods like that, the idea of socialism can be implemented, where you can ensure that if not utopian equality, you can ensure that the inequality is not beyond certain limits, so that it starts affecting the society's health. I hope I have answered your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. And you have actually thrown some insights on issues which have I've always been seeking an answer to, at least somewhere. And your point on fixing the income limits and such things in order to reduce at least the inequalities sounds very, very, very good, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are there more questions, or else, as Sir had suggested, we can have conversation online? You can send an email to Sir and extend this conversation.
Yeah, and I will also share my latest article, which I have just finished writing last night, on why Yasin Malik should be pardoned, just like A.G. Perarivalan, and also because government of India is now engaged in a dialogue with the National Socialist Council of Nagaland, leaders of Nagaland, and is debating, giving them a shared sovereignty. So I will share that article also, and if there are any other issues on which people would like to discuss, I'll be very happy to interact with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Over to Raju Sir and Aaron Koshi Sir.
Thank you, Rishikesh sir. It was indeed enriching to listen to Sandeep Pandey ji. And as I was mentioning, his experience, his activist life, his take on like I wouldn't say. I mean, he's quite clear of his stance on the issues that we are all engaging with at some point or the other. And his clarity, his vision is indeed appreciable. And I'm sure our students and our faculty members in academia are going to benefit from these kind of engagements. Definitely going beyond the textbooks and getting to know the reality from the grassroots level is something that is important for us. We generally talk about industry academy interaction these days, and I would say we cannot merely benefit from that kind of an interaction if we don't take into consideration these pressing concerns of our times. So I'm very happy that we could listen to Sandeep Pandey once again. Thanks a lot, sir, for being here today. And hopefully we will host you again in School of Management Studies. And Rishikesh sir was mentioning that they would want you to be in Christ as well. That would be really good for our students, I'm sure. Thanks a lot, sir, once again. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Aaron?
I think Register has added his points. Nothing much. I hope everyone has liked the session, and it has truly been very informative for all of us, as you had also thrown a lot of points, which has definitely opened our minds to various other facets. Uh, I would also like to thank Professor Rishikesh for his support in this session, as he has guided this talk in the way it should have been. And his insights have also been an add-on to the entire discussion. We value all your efforts, sir, and thank you, sir, for moderating this event. Uh, we thank all the other faculties and students who have joined from various other places for this discussion. Once again, we thank Dr. Dr. Pandey and his team for organizing this event and being with us. Thank you. Thank you all.